Journey to the Cross, Day 11. The cross of Jesus Christ purchased more than forgiveness for you. We should forever celebrate the cross of Jesus Christ as the only possible means for forgiveness. That celebration should mark our lives now and for the rest of eternity. But we cannot restrict our understanding and celebration of the cross to its value as God's gracious means of forgiveness, because the cross offers us so much more. There is an aspect of what the cross provides for us that is essential to our lives as God's children that I don't think we study enough, meditate on enough, or celebrate enough. Pretend that I had done something extremely hurtful to you, something that was a terrible betrayal of the love and trust between us, something that was a self-oriented denial of the way any healthy relationship was meant to operate. And pretend that you had confronted me, and after defending myself, I confessed that what I had done was a terrible personal affront. Pretend with me that after my confession, grief flooded into my heart, and I came to you with tears of sorrow and asked you for your forgiveness. Pretend that you were kind and gracious and were willing to forgive me. And not only that, you were willing to reconcile with me so that we could be in a friendship with one another again. And pretend that your forgiveness and our reconciliation had removed my guilt and brought peace not only between us, but in our heart. With all the grace of forgiveness and reconciliation, there is still something I desperately need that you are not able to give me. Do you know what it is? You could not work changes in me that would ensure that not only would I never do the same thing again, but I would treat you with a deeper love and respect and have a fresh commitment to give and to serve. You can forgive me, but you are not able to change me. What you did for me was wonderful and kind, but because you are human and limited, it's not enough. The cross of Jesus Christ not only does the first two things for us, forgiveness and reconciliation, but it also does the third thing for us, change. Let's look at how the writer of Hebrews talks about this often neglected aspect of the transforming grace of the cross of Jesus. But when Christ appeared as high priest of the good things that have come, then through the greater and more perfect tent, not made with human hands, that is not of this creation, he entered once for all into the holy places, not by means of the blood of goats and calves, but by means of his own blood, thus securing an eternal redemption. For if the blood of goats and bulls and the sprinkling of defiled persons with ashes of a heifer sanctify for the purification of flesh, how much more will the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without blemish to God, purify our conscience from the dead works to serve the living God? What a power-packed statement of grace that is ours because of the cross of Jesus Christ. It would take many devotionals to explore all the glories of grace that these words lay before us. But I want to draw your attention to the final thought. How much more will the blood of Christ purify our conscience from dead works to serve living God? Hebrews 9:14. What is the writer of Hebrews talking about, and why is it so important? To answer the question, you have to understand the vital function of the conscience in the way that God designed us and intended us to live. The conscience is the inner alarm system that God designed to warn us and redirect us. It is a beautiful thing to have a tender and lively conscience. It is beautiful when your conscience alerts you to moral danger or plagues you when you have done what is wrong. The conscience is an irreplaceable tool that God has built within us so that we would live as he had intended. But sin has damaged the function of this vital tool of the heart. In order to understand that damage, you have to understand that your alarm, that is your conscience, only sounds based on the standard that your heart has surrendered to. This means that a good and godly moral value system will allow your conscience to function properly. But a bad and self-centered moral value system will mean that your conscience will do you harm. Since sin causes us to exchange worship and service of the Creator for worship and service of the creation, and since the thing that is at the center of that idolatry is ourselves, without divine intervention, our consciences just don't operate the way God intended. But there is another way that sin interrupts and distorts the work that God intended the conscience to do. The conscience is able to do its work only if it can see clearly, anticipating the moral danger ahead, or focusing on a failure that has just happened. Moral sightedness is essential to the proper functioning of the essential tool of the heart. Here's the problem with the need for the conscience to see clearly. Sin blinds. Sin causes the conscience to be unable to see what it needs to see to sound the moral alarm. And sin not only blinds the conscience so it cannot function as God intended, sin also causes the conscience to be blind to its blindness. So we think we are seeing clearly and that the alarm system is working well. But in our sin, we are trusting what is blind and what lives under an idolatrous value system to be morally trustworthy. Hebrew tells us that the blood of Christ does this amazing thing. It cleanses the conscience. It cleanses it from the bondage to itself and surrounding creation. It cleanses it of its blindness, imparting to it a renewed ability to see. It cleanses it from a corrupt moral value system, giving room now for a life dedicated to and directed by a desire to live according to God's law and for His glory. The cross doesn't just purchase God's forgiveness for us, but it also changes us. And at the heart of that change is a conscience that has been cleansed by the transforming grace of the blood of Jesus. Every time you see sin ahead and avoid it, and every time you look back on what you have done with moral grief, you are experiencing the grace of the cleansing of your conscience. This is a vital and precious aspect of what Jesus did on the cross for you and for me that we often neglect when we are meditating on and celebrating the death of Jesus. This Lenten season, don't just reflect on the necessity of your forgiveness. Take time also to consider the amazing grace of a conscience that has been cleansed and is able now more than ever before to do in you and for you what God intended.